The gravel crunched under my tires like bones snapping as I skidded to a halt in the driveway, the storm raging outside mirroring the one tearing through my chest. "Nathaniel, please, don't make me beg." Jake's voice had cracked over the phone just minutes ago, raw and desperate, but I was already slamming the car door, rain soaking me to the bone because saying no to him had never been an option. Not after everything, not when his world was crumbling, and mine was about to follow right after. I pounded on the door of that sprawling craftsman bungalow in the hills of Seattle, the kind of house that screamed old money and quiet regrets, water streaming down my face like tears I hadn't earned yet. The porch light flickered on, casting jagged shadows, and when Victor Hale opened the door, Jake's dad, all broad shoulders and silver-streaked hair, his flannel shirt clinging wet from the downpour, he looked at me not with surprise, but with the hollow eyes of a man who'd been waiting for the axe to fall. "Kid," he rasped, voice like gravel under boots, "you shouldn't be here, but I was." And in that moment, as lightning cracked the sky open, I knew walking away wasn't in the cards. Not for Jake's sake. Not for mine. I'd known Jake since we were scrawny freshmen at the University of Washington, bonding over late-night ramen and dreams of escaping the Pacific Northwest drizzle for something brighter, bigger, like LA sunsets or New York hustle. He was the golden boy, easy laugh, surfer hair, the guy who could charm a room full of profs into extensions. Me, Nathaniel Reyes, the scholarship kid from the wrong side of Tacoma, with a chip on my shoulder the size of the sound and a camera always slung around my neck, capturing moments no one else bothered to see. We were opposites that clicked, him pulling me into keggers and road trips, me dragging him to indie film fests and hole-in-the-wall Takarius where we'd argue about Scorsese versus Spielberg until the sun came up. Victor's shadow had always loomed large in Jake's stories. The ex-Marine turned contractor, widowed young after Jake's mom lost her battle with cancer when he was 12. Victor raised him solo, turning their home into a fortress of flannel and football, tools scattered like landmines in the garage. Jake idolized him, but there was always this undercurrent. Attention Jake brushed off as dad stuff, bills piling up, late nights at the site, the way Victor's laugh never quite reached his eyes anymore. "He's just tired, Nate," Jake would say, clapping my shoulder too hard. "Aren't we all?" The call came on a Tuesday, the kind of gray Seattle afternoon that makes you question if the sun's just a myth. I was in my cramped Capitol Hill apartment, editing footage from a freelance gig, some indie doc on Urban Decay, when my phone buzzed. Jake's name flashed, but it was his voice that hit like a gut punch. Slurred, sobbing, the kind of broken that sticks in your throat. "Nate. He's gone. Dad's. Fuck. I can't." Static, then the crash of glass. Jake, my unbreakable Jake, unraveling because Victor had vanished. Left a note on the kitchen table, something about debts, shame, not wanting to drag them down, and then poof. Gone into the night, his truck keys missing, wallet left behind like a final fuck you. I drove like hell to their place, found Jake curled on the couch amid takeout boxes and empty beers, his face a map of red veins and regret. "He thinks he's protecting me," he whispered, clutching that crumpled note. "Says he's sorry. For everything. The debts were bad, construction gigs drying up in the recession, loan sharks circling like vultures after a bad investment in some startup that tanked. Victor, the Rock, reduced to a ghost running from his own shadow. I didn't think. I just acted. "I'll find him," I said, grabbing my keys. Jake's eyes lit up with that desperate gratitude that twists knives later. "You'd do that? For us?" Like it was always a package deal. I nodded, ignoring the flutter in my gut, the one that had nothing to do with worry and everything to do with the way Victor's photo on the mantel had always made my pulse stutter. Tall, rugged, those laugh lines around his eyes like invitations I pretended not to see. That's how I ended up at the old family cabin up in the Cascades. A tip from Victor's foreman who'd overheard him muttering about one last look at the place his wife loved. The storm had rolled in fierce, turning the winding road into a river of mud, but I pushed the old Civic to its limits, wipers slapping futility against the torrent. By the time I reached the dirt pull-off, night had fallen like a shroud, and the cabin loomed dark against the pines, its windows black holes swallowing the lightning flashes. I should have turned back. Should have called the cops. Let professionals handle the suicidal hunch gnawing at me. But Jake's voice echoed, "You're the only one I trust, Nate." And so I trudged through the underbrush, flashlight beam cutting swaths through the deluge, until I spotted the truck. Abandoned, hood warm, doors unlocked. Inside, a half-empty flask of bourbon, Victor's wedding ring glinting on the dash like a taunt. The lake's edge was a siren's call in the storm, black water churning, waves slapping the dock like accusations. And there he was, Victor Hale, bottle in one hand, the other white-knuckled on the railing, staring into the abyss like it held answers. Rain plastered his shirt to his chest, outlining muscles honed from years of hauling lumber and heartbreak. He didn't hear me approach over the thunder, didn't turn until I grabbed his arm, yanking him back from the drop. "What the fuck?" he whirled, eyes wild, flask spilling amber into the mud. Then recognition hit, and something worse, shame. "Nathaniel? Jesus. Kid, get out of here. You're not doing this," I shouted over the wind, my grip iron on his sleeve. "Not tonight. Not ever." He laughed, bitter and broken, shoving me off but not hard enough to mean it. "You don't get it. I've ruined everything. Jake. God, my boy deserves better than this mess I made." The words hung heavy, laced with the bourbon on his breath, and in that flash of lightning, I saw it all. The lines etched deep around his mouth, the tremor in his free hand, the man who'd built walls around his grief until they caged him too. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe the adrenaline, maybe the rain washing away my filters, but I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him despite the chill. "Then let me help. For Jake. For you." My voice cracked on the last word, and his eyes locked on mine, searching, stormy blue meeting my hazel in a collision that stole the air from my lungs. He didn't pull away when I took the flask, didn't resist when I led him back to the cabin. Inside, the place was a time capsule. Faded photos of a younger Victor with a laughing woman, Jake as a gap-toothed kid fishing off that dock. We dripped puddles on the worn pine floors, and I busied myself with the ancient wood stove, coaxing flames to life while he slumped at the kitchen table, head in hands. "You flew all this way in this shit?" he murmured eventually, voice muffled. "For a fool like me?" "Not for a fool," I said, handing him a threadbare towel. "For family." The word tasted like a lie, because as I watched him dry his face, that silver hair curling damp at his temples, I felt it, the pull I'd buried since the first backyard barbecue, when he'd clapped my back and called me son, in a way that lingered too long in dreams I never admitted. We talked then, halting at first, the fire popping like punctuation. He spilled it all. The gambling that started as one bet on the Seahawks after Elena's funeral, spiraling into underground cards and markers from guys who broke fingers for fun. The business tanking, calls from collectors at dawn, Jake's tuition hanging by a thread. I thought if I just disappeared, he said, staring at the flames, he'd be free. Insurance payout, fresh start. Bullshit, I snapped, sharper than I meant. Jake needs his dad, not some ghost payout. And you deserve more than this pity party. The words hung, bold and unfiltered, and he looked up, really looked, his gaze tracing my face like he was seeing me for the first time. Not Jake's sidekick. Not the kid with the camera. Me. The silence stretched, thick as the smoke curling from the stove, until he reached out, slow, tentative, and squeezed my knee under the table. Why'd you really come, Nathaniel? Truth. My heart jackhammered, the room shrinking to the space between us. Rain drummed the roof like a countdown. Because I couldn't not, I whispered. Because losing you would break him. And me. His thumb brushed my jeans, a ghost of a touch that ignited something feral. Then, in a move that shattered the world, he leaned in, lips crashing against mine with the desperation of a man drowning. Salt and bourbon and storm, his hand cupping my jaw like I was salvation. I froze for a heartbeat, Jake's dad, this forbidden line, and then I kissed back, hands fisting his shirt, pulling him closer until we were a tangle of need and regret on that creaky chair. It wasn't gentle. It was thunder, clashing teeth, gasping breaths, his stubble scraping my skin raw. He tasted like loss, and I drank it down, fingers threading his hair, memorizing the weight of him against me. When we broke apart, foreheads pressed, his voice was wrecked. We can't. But we did. That night, in the cabin's sagging bed with sheets that smelled of pine and memory, Victor Hale, Jake's unbreakable dad, unraveled in my arms. Whispers in the dark, bodies mapping unfamiliar terrain, the storm outside paling against the one we unleashed. It was wrong, electric, a secret etched in sweat and sighs, and as dawn crept through the cracks, painting his face gold, I knew this was no rescue. This was ruin. Morning light sliced through the cabin blinds like judgment, turning the rumpled bed into a crime scene of tangled limbs and discarded clothes. Victor stirred first, his arm heavy across my waist, breath warm against my neck, an anchor I didn't want to shake off. But reality clawed in with the robins outside. Jake. The note. The debts. And now this, a complication wrapped in flannel and forbidden heat. I slipped out carefully, padding to the kitchen in boxers and his oversized hoodie, the floorboards groaning like warnings. Coffee brewed strong, black as the guilt brewing in my gut, and I stared out at the lake, now serene under a clearing sky, mocking the chaos inside me. How do you go from helping a friend to waking up with his father? How do you unring that bell? Victor appeared in the doorway, jeans low on his hips, bare chest marked with faint scars from God knows what wars, desert sands or bar fights. His eyes, clearer now without the bourbon haze, held a mix of wonder and wariness. "Morning, kid," he said, voice rough as the Cascades, leaning against the frame like he needed it to stay upright. "Nathaniel," I corrected softly, handing him a mug. Our fingers brushed, sparking memories of midnight touches, and he winced, setting it down untouched. About last night, he trailed off, rubbing his neck, that military precision cracking under civilian regret. That was fuck. I was a mess. You were there. Solid. I crossed a line I can't uncross. I wanted to argue, to say it was mutual, electric, the kind of connection that rewires your soul. But the words stuck, because yeah, it was wrong. Jake's face flashed. His trust, our brotherhood, and shame burned hotter than desire. We both did, I admitted, voice steady despite the tremor. But disappearing? That's not the answer. Come home, Victor. Face it. With Jake. With whatever this is. He laughed, low and mirthless, crossing to me in 2 strides. This, Nate, you're half my age. Jake's best friend. I'm the guy who taught him to throw a spiral. Not this. His hand hovered near my cheek, then dropped, but the air crackled anyway. Then teach me something else, I challenged, stepping into the space he left, close enough to smell the lake on his skin. How to fight for what's worth it. His resolve crumbled like the bluffs after rain. He kissed me then, slower, deliberate, a claiming that tasted of coffee and contrition. Hands roaming with purpose, mapping collarbones and hips, until we were back against the counter, the world narrowing to gasps and the drip of the faucet. It was daylight now, no storm to blame, just us choosing the fall. We drove back in silence, his truck rumbling down the mountain pass, my Civic trailing like a guilty shadow. Seattle sprawled below, all steel and evergreens, indifferent to the bomb we'd strapped to our chests. Jake was waiting on the porch when we pulled up, gaunt and wild-eyed, launching himself at Victor before the engine died. Dad. The hug was fierce, bone-crushing, Jake's shoulders shaking. Victor held him tight, murmuring apologies into blonde hair, and I hung back, the outsider in my own rescue op. Nate found you, Jake said, pulling me in, oblivious to the undercurrent. Fucking hero, man. I owe you eternal beers. If only he knew the debt ran deeper. We played it straight that night. Pizza delivery, Jake cracking jokes to fill the voids, Victor nodding along with forced smiles. But under the table, his boot nudged mine, a secret Morse code that set my nerves alight. Later, after Jake crashed on the couch, exhausted relief knocking him out cold, Victor cornered me in the hallway, back to the wall, his body a barrier of heat and hesitation. This can't happen here, he whispered, even as his lips grazed my ear. Not with him under the roof. Then where? I breathed, heart pounding a tattoo against his chest. His answer was a stolen kiss, quick and searing, before he vanished into his room. I lay awake in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, replaying every touch, every sigh. It was addiction, this pull raw, uncharted, the kind of love that doesn't come with maps. The next weeks blurred into a dangerous rhythm. By day, I was Jake's rock, helping him navigate community college apps, crashing game nights with bad puns and worse nachos. Victor kept his distance in public, gruff nods at barbecues, passed the salt at dinners, but his eyes followed me, hungry and haunted. Late nights, when Jake was buried in shifts at the coffee shop, Victor would text, "Porch." Now, we'd meet in the shadows, kisses like contraband, hands exploring under starlit skies until the risk of headlights forced us apart. Deep and fast, that forbidden current. One rainy evening, after Jake bailed on movie night for a date, Victor invited me to the garage, his sanctuary of half-built shelves and oil stains. "Need a hand?" I asked, but we both knew it was pretext. He showed me how to sand edges smooth, his calloused fingers guiding mine, voices low over the radio's classic rock hum. Springsteen crooned about highways and heartbreak, and when the song hit the bridge, Victor turned, pinning me against the workbench. "Tell me to stop," he growled, forehead to mine, breath ragged. "Never," I shot back, yanking him closer. We made love there amid sawdust and spark. Urgent, unpolished, his body a landscape of strength and surrender. He whispered my name like a prayer, vulnerabilities spilling. Elena's ghost, the loneliness that carved him hollow, how Jake's light was the only thing that kept him tethered. I confessed, too, the ache of being the other in my family, the way his quiet strength had haunted me since 17. It wasn't just sex. It was communion, souls bared in the dim glow of a bare bulb. But cracks formed. Jake noticed the shifts, Victor's brighter eyes, my lingering glances. "You two getting along better?" he asked one afternoon over burgers at Dick's, ketchup smearing his grin. I choked on a fry, mumbling something about common ground, while guilt gnawed like acid. The debts loomed too. Victor scraped gigs, fixing up a neighbor's deck, moonlighting on a high-rise, but the calls persisted, voicemails laced with threats. 1 week, hail, or we pay a visit to Junior. I pushed him to come clean with Jake, but pride was his armor, rusted but unyielding. "Can't burden him," he'd say, even as we lay spent in stolen hours, my head on his chest, listening to his heart's unsteady drum. Then came the catalyst. A weekend trip to the Sound, Jake's idea for bro time to celebrate his acceptance letter. Victor tagged along, reluctant, but I saw the flicker of hope in his eyes at the invite. We rented a cabin on Whidbey Island, all driftwood and salt air, kayaks bobbing in the cove. Days were idyllic, Jake and I racing waves, Victor grilling salmon with that easy command, laughter echoing off the bluffs. Nights, though nights were minefields. Jake crashed early each time, buzzed on IPAs, leaving Victor and me orbiting like planets too close to collide. On the last night, bonfire crackling on the beach, Jake wandered off for a smoke, and Victor pulled me into the shadows of the pines. "This, us, it's killing me," he admitted, voice fracturing. "Want you so bad it hurts. But Jake," I silenced him with a kiss, fierce and forgiving, hands framing his face. "We'll figure it. Together." But as embers died and Jake's silhouette returned, I felt the noose tightening. Secrets have weight, and ours was dragging us under. Back in Seattle, the storm broke, not the weather kind, but the real one. Jake burst into my apartment unannounced, face thunderous, phone clutched like evidence. "What the fuck is this, Nate?" He thrust it at me. Screenshots from a mutual friend's snap, grainy shots of Victor's truck at my building, late-night timestamps. "Dad's been parking down the block. Twice a week. And you're, what, his errand boy now?" My stomach plummeted. "It's not," but lies died on my tongue. Jake's eyes narrowed, piecing it with the glances, the excuses. You're fucking screwing around with my dad? The word exploded, venomous, betrayal carving his features. My best friend? Jesus. Nate. How long? The room spun, air thick with the rot of my deception. Jake. Listen. No. He shoved me, hard enough to sting. You rescued him from the lake, played hero, and now you're… This? He's twice your age. Nate. Broken. What? You think it's love? Some rom-com bullshit. It's more. I choked out, tears hot. It's real. Victor's real. Jake recoiled like I'd slapped him, hurt blooming into rage. Get out of my life. Both of you. The door slammed, echoing like finality, and I sank to the floor, the weight of it all crashing down. The fallout hit like a Seattle winter, relentless, bone-chilling, stripping everything bare. Jake ghosted me, blocked numbers, deleted years of texts, our shared Spotify playlist vanishing like smoke. His socials went dark, then exploded with cryptic posts, quotes about trust and thunderclaps over Puget Sound, each one a dagger twist. I drove by their house once, twice, the bungalow mocking me with its lit windows, but Victor's truck was gone, Jake's beater in the drive. Radio silence from both. Victor broke first. A burner phone call at 2 a.m. Nate. Meet me. The sight. His voice was wrecked. Gravel over glass. And I went because addicts don't quit cold. The construction lot was a skeleton of steel beams under floodlights, chain link rattling in the wind off the bay. He waited in the cab of a borrowed rig, face haggard, nursing a thermos of something stronger than Joe. He's gone, Victor said without preamble, passing it over. Whiskey burned going down, matching the fire in his eyes. Packed a bag after you left. Said he needed space. From us. From this poison. Guilt clawed deeper, but anger flickered too at Jake for running, at Victor for the walls he'd built, at myself for igniting the fuse. We should have told him, I said, sliding closer on the bench seat, the cab a cocoon of vinyl and regret. From the start, Victor snorted, bitter. And what? Hand him a Hallmark card? Hey son, banging your buddy? His hand found my thigh, squeezed desperate. I lost Elena, then almost him. Can't lose you two. We collided there, in that anonymous truck, the city lights blurring through rain-streaked glass. It was frantic, almost punitive, nails raking backs, hips grinding with the urgency of thieves stealing time. He buried his face in my neck, murmuring Spanish fragments Elena taught him. Me lose, me to do, and I clung, whispering promises I couldn't keep. Afterward, spent and shivering, he traced my ribs with calloused fingers. This life's been gray since she went. Your color, Nate. Dangerous, beautiful color. I wanted to believe it, to drown in that poetry. But dawn brought collectors. 2 goons in a black SUV, tires crunching gravel as they cornered Victor at the site. I watched from my car, heart seizing as they dragged him behind a beam, fists flying before words. Payment due. Hail. Or we take it out on the boy, Jake. The threat hung, explicit, and Victor's roar, defiant, pained, echoed like thunder. I intervened, reckless, barreling out with phone raised, filming the shakedown like the journalist I pretended to be. Back off. I'm calling it in. They scattered, curses fading into exhaust. But the damage stuck, Victor's split lip, bruised ribs, and a deadline slashed to days. "We end this," he growled later, ice pack to his jaw in my apartment. "The debt. All of it. But how?" Victor's Hail Mary was a poker game, high-stakes underground, the kind where fortunes flip on a river card. "One night," he said, ice fierce. "Winnings cover it. Clean slate." I hated it, the itch of old habits, the risk of deeper holes, but his desperation mirrored mine. "I'm in," I said. "Your lucky charm." The den was a basement in Pioneer Square, all haze and desperation. Felt tables under bare bulbs, air thick with sweat and stale smoke. Victor cleaned up sharp, button-down rolled to elbows, silver at his temples catching light like warnings. I hovered at the bar, nursing a soda, nerves jangling as he sat with the sharks. Tattooed muscle, a shark in a silk tie, the boss, Marco, with eyes like oil slicks. Hands blurred, Victor bluffing with a stone face, stacking chips like a general. I caught his glances, steadying anchors amid the chaos, and for hours, he dominated, full houses, straight flushes, the pot swelling fat. Marco's smile thinned with each loss, but Victor pressed, voice even, all in. The room hushed, cards flipping, Victor's aces high, Marco's kings buried. Elation surged as chips slid his way, enough to bury the debt twice over. But greed's a siren, and Victor, riding the high, called for one more. Double or nothing. My stomach nodded. I shook my head from the shadows, but he didn't see. The flop favored him. Turn held. River. Disaster. Marco's flush, gleaming like fangs. Victor's face drained, chips raked away, and Marco's whisper carried, interest compounds. Hail. Now we own you. We fled into the night. Victor silent fury at the wheel, me white-knuckled passenger. Why? I demanded, back at my place, storming the kitchen. We had enough. Thought I could fix it all, he admitted, slumping against the fridge, defeat etching new lines. Be the dad who provides. Not the fuck-up. I softened, pulling him close, kisses turning to comfort. You're enough. We fight together, but as we fell into bed, bodies seeking solace, a knock shattered the illusion, insistent, ominous. Marco's goon, solo this time, filling the doorway with menace. Boss says collateral. The pretty one stays put till Hale pays. Me. Bait. Victor lunged, but the guy was faster, gun drawn, casual as a wallet. Easy, old man. Or Junior gets a call he won't like. Jake, implied. Victor froze, hands up, and they zip-tied me to the bedpost, a cruel joke on our sanctuary. 48 hours, the thug sneered, tossing Victor a burner. Or we collect creative. Alone. Victor paced like a caged wolf, phone glued to ear, calling markers, old Marine buddies, anyone with cash or clout. I tugged at the plastic, wrists raw, hating my helplessness. Let me go, I urged. Use me as leverage against them. No, he snarled, kneeling to cup my face, eyes wild. You're not a pawn, Nate. You're my heart. The confession hung, raw and real, and in that basement-lit room, with fear coiling tight, I saw it, love, not lust. The kind that reshapes ruins. He vanished at dawn, kissing my forehead, promising back by nightfall. leaving me bound and boiling. Hours stretched. Mind racing scenarios. Jake finding out. Cops too late. Victor broken in an alley. When the door finally creaked, it was him, disheveled, envelope thick in hand. Pawned the ring, he said, sawing the ties. Her ring. Bought time. Relief crashed, but so did tears, his hot on my shoulder as I held him. Can't lose you, he sobbed. First crack in the armor. Not to this. Not ever. We ran then, literally. Packed a go-bag. Hit the road south on I-5. Victor's truck eating miles toward Portland. Jake's texts pierced the silence. Where are you? Dad's gone again. Call me. Guilt gnawed, but survival trumped. In a roadside motel, neon buzzing vacancy like a dare, we plotted, cross state lines, crash with a cousin in Eugene, liquidate what we could. Nights blurred into intimacy's refuge, slow explorations by lava lamp glow, Victor's hands learning my curves like blueprints, my lips tracing his scars like stories. He opened up, boyhood in Tacoma Mills, Elena's laugh like summer, the void after cancer's theft. Thought I'd never feel again, he murmured, fingers laced with mine. Then you, stubborn, seeing me when I was invisible. I shared too. Immigrant parents' pressures, the closet's weight in high school, Jake as my first safe harbor. You saw me back, I said. Not the sidekick. The man. It was fragile idol, but Portland shattered it. Victor's cousin bailed, spooked by Marco's reach, and we holed up in a dive bar's back room, slinging drinks for cash. Jake's calls escalated, voicemails pleading, then furious. Nate, if you're with him, fucking explain. One night, buzzed on cheap gin, Victor cracked, call him. End this. I did, from a payphone under sodium lights, voice trembling. Jake. It's me. We're okay. But it's complicated. Silence. Then explosion. Complicated? You stole my dad. You backstabbing prick. He's twice your age. Sick. Nate. Using you to run from his shit. Not using, I defended. Throat tight. Loving. We love each other. Laughter. Hollow. Love? That's delusion. Come home. Alone. Or we're done forever. The line died, and I slid down the booth. Victor's arms my only anchor. Betrayal's blade cut both ways. Jake's pain a mirror to mine. Years of brotherhood eviscerated. He'll come around, Victor soothed, but doubt shadowed his eyes. Marco's net tightened next dawn. Bar torched, whispers of message sent. We bolted again, deeper into Oregon wine country, a borrowed cabin amid vineyards. There, in harvest haze, Victor proposed a Hail Mary, confront Marco, go legit with evidence I'd gathered, photos, recordings from the shakedown. Cops in Salem, he said. Bury him, risky, but cornered wolves bite. We drove, hearts syncopated, stopping at a roadside chapel for luck. Not vows, but a quiet exchange of rings from a gumball machine, cheap bands glinting like defiance. The meat was a warehouse on the Willamette, air-fetid with river rot. Marco waited, flanked by goons, smirk oily. Hail. And the twink. Payment. Victor tossed the envelope. Fake docs. My phone's footage queued. Or this goes viral. Feds love interstate threats. Bluff held for a breath. Marco's eyes flickered, then shattered. Goons lunged, fists and steel flashing. Chaos erupted. Victor tackling one, me dodging swings, knee to a gut. A crack, gunshot, and Victor crumpled, blood blooming on his shirt. "No!" I screamed, scrambling to him, hands pressing the wound, slick and hot. Marco loomed, barrel cold to my temple. End of the line, lovers. Sirens wailed distant. Anonymous tip I'd made en route, and Marco bolted, goons scattering like roaches. Paramedics swarmed. Victor pale on the gurney, my hand in his as lights blurred to ER white. The hospital smelled of bleach and broken promises, beeps a metronome to Victor's shallow breaths. Bullet grazed his side, clean through muscle. No vitals hit, but infection loomed, IVs dripping antibiotics like penance. I sat vigil, Jake's unanswered texts burning holes in my pocket, the ring on my finger a talisman against the sterile dread. Cops came first, detectives with notepads and coffee breath, piecing the extortion racket. My footage sealed it, Marco's empire cracking under warrants. "You saved his life," one said, clapping my shoulder. "And maybe a dozen others." Victor, groggy from morphine, squeezed my hand under the sheet. "Silent thanks," I sang, "you saved me." Jake arrived at dusk, storming the room like a squall, face ashen, eyes red-rimmed from the drive. "What the hell happened?" he demanded, gaze flicking from Victor's bandages to me, accusation thick. Victor stirred, voice weak but steady. "Son. Sit. We talk," poured out then, halting at first Victor's debts, the cabin rescue, the spark that ignited into flame. I filled gaps, the love, the fear, the run. Jake listened, fists clenched, color draining as truths layered like sediment. "You." "Both," he whispered, betrayal fresh but fraying at edges. "My dad? Nate, you're like a brother." The word stung, brother, not lover, but Victor reached, tentative. "I know. Failed you there. But this him, it's real. Gave me reason to fight back." Jake's gaze shattered to mine, searching for the boy he'd known. "Did you plan this? After the lake?" "No," I said. "Bro. It just was. And it hurts, losing you. But I can't lose him." Silence stretched, heavy as the four stand's shadow. Then Jake deflated, sinking into the chair, head in hands. "Fuck. All of it. Mom would've. Shit. I don't know." Sobs broke, guttural, and Victor pulled him close, bandaged arm awkward but fierce. I hovered, outsider again, until Jake looked up, eyes wet. "Doesn't fix it. The lies. The everything. But you're still dad. And Nate, you're still you. Somehow. Forgiveness? Not yet. But a crack, light through Seattle clouds." Jake stayed, mediating calls to lawyers, wrangling insurance, his presence a bridge over the chasm. Days blurred. Victor mending, physio sessions where I'd sneak kisses in empty halls, Jake's barbs softening to questions. "He treat you right?" he'd mutter over vending machine chips. "Better than I did." "Ha!" Discharge brought us home. Not the bungalow, but my apartment, Jake's truce tentative. Victor healed slow, scars pink reminders, But he dove in NA meetings for the gambling, community college for trade certs, hands that once built empires now crafting birdhouses for the farmer's market. I freelance docs on resilience, ironic therapy, and Jake. Jake thawed. Game nights returned. Awkward at first, beers instead of barbs, toasts to new normals. One crisp fall evening, leaves carpeting Capitol Hill like confetti, Jake cornered me on the fire escape. City lights twinkled below, fairy horns a distant lullaby. Saw the rings, he said, nodding at my hand. Cheap, but serious. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah. Thinking Vegas. Quiet. If you'll stand up. He barked a laugh. Genuine, clapping my back. Hell yeah. But if you break his heart, I break your face. Pause. Softer. Missed you, asshole. Even if you're banging my old man. Relief flooded. Brotherhood's embers reigniting. We hugged it out. Raw and real. The betrayal scar fading to story. Victor's proposal came winter solstice style. Rooftop under string lights. Snow flurrying soft. Seattle's skyline a glittering witness. He knelt, knee-popping comically, holding not a diamond, but Elena's ring, resized. Kept it for luck, he said, voice steady. But it's yours now. Marry me, Nate. Build something true. Tears froze on my lashes. Yes. 1,000 times. The wedding was small courthouse. Jake best man in a flannel that matched Victor's. A taco truck reception where we danced to Springsteen under heat lamps. Vows were simple. In ruins and rain. I choose you. Jake's toast cracked us up. To second chances. And to Nate. Not fucking up my family more than he already has. Life settled. Human and hard won. Victor's business bloomed. Sustainable builds. Green cred from his certs. Jake graduated. Landed a gig in graphic design. Even crashed our anniversary with bad wine and worse stories. Betrayals lingered in quiet moments. Jake's flinch at PDAs. Victor's nightmares of debts. But we wove them into tapestry. Therapy sessions. Bonfires where confessions burned bright. Years on. 30. I look back from our queen and porch, Victor's arm around me. Jake grilling with his partner. A barista with tattoos and tolerance. The sound a silver thread below. What started as a rescue became revolution. Love defying labels. Family reforged in fire. Surprised? Beyond belief. But in America's messy grace, where rain washes clean and hearts stubborn as the mountains, we found our way. And damn, it was worth every shattered line.